and welcome to David Photography. On today's episode we are going to look at why Nikon only has one slot and the reason why. Enjoy! Hello and welcome to David Photography. This is an unusual position to be in. I'm actually sitting on the stairs in my house because it's chucking it down rain outside. And what do I want to discuss today? I made a few notes. A few things which everyone has been saying on their channels about the new Nikon 6 and 7. So, we're going to tell you why they only put one slot in. It's quite simple. Okay, Nikon came out with their brand new camera, promising the world and providing all of their loyal Nikon fans with lackluster camera. Really, all you can say is that they didn't push all the correct buttons. They didn't back up the promises that they made. In all terms, you're looking at a camera which was Sony's camera 1 or 2 years ago. So they're going to be behind, and Sony are going to be laughing all to the bank. If you take it that the day after their launch of the cameras, their Z6 and Z7s, their shares on the stock market dropped. At the same time, Sony and quite a few other camera manufacturers' shares increased. What can you take from that? What should you take from that? The market is very uneasy about all the negative about this new camera, but it is technically a first step on the mirrorless market, and therefore maybe you should just ignore that it isn't quite what everyone expects it to be. But let's have a look at some other problems, if they are problems at all, and let's continue. Okay, let's look at the battery life, and let's look at one of their first big cock-ups. Is really the only way you can put it. They, on their own website, advertised that the video record speed was between 10 and 15 minutes. The next day they changed that to 85 minutes. So you could ask yourself a very simple question. What idiot put up 10 to 15 minutes, and what does it refer to? Didn't someone check? You're just going to stick stuff up on your website so the whole world can see. That's wrong. If you read that, that actually put quite a number of people off and they cancelled their orders. Now it doesn't say they're going to re-order it now. That Nikon have fixed and corrected what it is. Because how can you have any trust that this new figure they put up is anywhere near accurate? Made one mistake, how do you know this one isn't a mistake as well? But we also look at that they're saying 85 minutes for video. The A7 R3 advertised on Sony's website says it can do 100. The only reason that it may be different, maybe it's down to the size of the batteries, megaamps, and therefore it's less due to that. Or it could be due to that, a bigger screen and more megapixels in their EVF, the more dots they have to light them up, so it's draining the battery more. But you have that, you have battery life, and everyone slated Sony when they came out with their camera because the battery life wasn't very good, and Sony corrected that and give a better battery. Nikon should have just given the better battery to start with, knowing fine well that all mirrorlesses drain power more because the screen is on all the time, so it's using power, other components within using power, and yet they decided to totally ignore it and just leave the battery that they've currently got, and that just doesn't work. Of course, crappy battery, low megapixel, mega amps, just equals that you just have a short life. What more can you say about the battery life? Only say when it comes to the proper cameras coming out, what people start getting, but what they turn off. Are they going to turn the screen off and only use it when they want it? Are they going to have it on all the time? Are they going to turn off the EVF? What changes are you going to make inside the camera to cut the power consumption and therefore increase the battery life? Just have to see. Okay, there's the battery dealt with. Okay, as was said, we have the XQD cards and we have its buffer. Now the buffer seems to be a bit on the crap side when you compare it against Sony's buffer. Now, I wrote down what I seen on Nikon's site and what I seen on Sony's site for the AR7. And the buffer on the Z6 says 38. And the buffer on the Z7 says 23. Sony's A7R3 says the buffer is 76. As you take it, that's 2 to 3 times better than the buffers being put on the Nikon. Now, that would be fine if the card was fast enough to handle it. But it seems fast enough to handle it on the Sony with an SD card before you fill up the buffer. So, what's gone wrong? Why didn't they just put a bigger buffer on the Nikon? Down to money. Obviously they're trying to cut some corners here. They're trying to just think that the card will take the speed of the pictures being taken, so therefore the buffer won't fill up. And if it was working right, it wouldn't, but it doesn't, so it does. So therefore you have that. The buffer is just not adequate. And if you're going to take lots of pictures, you're going to find that you're going to be hitting the buffer and having to wait for it to finish writing to the card, which isn't a brilliant thing when you're trying to take pictures. It's still coming. It really is. Why Nikon only put one slot in their camera? I haven't forgot. Really, I haven't. Now, in the pre-production, and when they gave out all the cameras, one person reported that they used JPEG at 14-bit RAW and the buffer filled up within 16 shots. It's made by Sony, so they're relying massively on Sony to produce this for them. But they're saying it's future-proof. Well, it doesn't seem to be giving some results that are very impressive, I would say. Let's look at this. Let's look at it this way, that Nikon is going against Sony, and Sony's megapixels and frame rate are almost the same. Yet Nikon is going to an XQD card and Sony is just going to a standard SD card. And the speed of transfer is almost the same between image getting onto the card. How is this possible if the XQD card is faster? The second problem that you have with an XQD card is that it's really expensive. A 64GB SQD card costs £150. A 128 costs £230. That's a lot of money to pay for an SD card. Any card. You know, you would ask yourself, wow, I'm supposed to carry a spare? Have a look on all the things. What do they tell you? Carry spare batteries, carry a spare memory card. Okay, now we need 2 memory cards, so that's at least £300. That's a lot of money. It really is. There's been problems with reliability or quality or things about the SQD card which has turned up and been said. It's not easily available. Technically, I only found it on Amazon and eBay. I can't go to my local supermarket and pick one up, but I can an SD card. I can go into a number of shops and they sell SD cards. Proper, decent quality, fast read and write speeds. All for 20 quid for a 64GB. So you're looking at 150 against 20 quid. So you can buy 8 SD cards. 8 64GB SD cards for the price of one of these. And you're going, surely it's not got the speed. Where is the speed? It's not quite right. There's something either about the camera or its ability to write to the XQD card that isn't quite right. They've cut a corner somewhere. There's something that's not allowing the speed. Technically, if that XD card was, as they say, fast, you shouldn't need a buffer at all. It should just write straight to the card. If it is lightning fast, how fast a card do you have to need to physically take a picture and have it write to the card instantly without buffering? Okay, so that's my take on the SD XQD cards. Okay. Okay, now let's look at the frames per second and the problem that you have with the frames per second that they advertise. When they advertise 12 frames per second, that means that you have no auto exposure and you have no live view, because they stop at 5.5 frames a second. So you're going, if you've got a subject and it's moving across your plane of view and you're following it, the light is going to change between one point and the next, but the camera's going to lock off the first shot, the exposure, and then use the same all the way through, which means that you could be going from darkness into light or light into darkness and the pictures just won't turn out. Well, not right anyway. Not without you really doing a whole pile of other work. Okay. We now have autofocus. Autofocus on the new Nikon seems to be a little bit weird. And when I looked at a number of people's videos, I came across one who took wildlife, sports and that type of photography, and he was a bit concerned on the autofocus side. Let's see, there is no group AF, there is no passive AF system, so he was more concerned that it doesn't seem to be a camera for doing wildlife or sport or anything quick. And that sort of goes and continues on, that when you look at what Nikon are not saying about the camera and what they're not pushing it as being, in all of their shows and all of their advertisements, there is very few sporting or action or speed events being shown. There was one picture of, I think what you said was horses, and that was it. The camera seems to be more set up and more aimed towards portraits and landscape over sports, birds, and all of these much further away items. And if you look at the lenses that have started, they're all really short millimeter ones, aren't they? They're not, you're not going anywhere big, are you? They're all more portrait or landscape type lenses. You don't have any 200mm on that lot, and you just wonder, why didn't they come out with the full range, saying, well, I'm going to have a 14 to 70, then a 70 to whatever, and then a whatever to whatever, and come out with them. So you covered all the range, and then after that, bring out the primes for it. Technically speaking, Nikon brought out the same lenses as what Sony did 5 years ago, and that Sony got, once again, kicked around. Nikon have copied Sony from 5 years ago for everything that they've done. They've produced things which, they produced the camera with a battery that only takes 300 shots. Well, allegedly, it will take more. Sony did that and got run over the coals for it. We have the lenses that came out. Everything seems to be matching. What did Nikon not talk about for their new camera? Take more notice of that, and especially on cost. Now, we're going to just say about cost. The Z6 is going to come in at around £2,000 with the adapter, if bought separately, at 250, but you're not going to do that. If you're going to buy the camera, the best thing to do is to buy the adapter. Now, I have seen on a website the adapter being sold for an additional £100 with the camera, not 150 or any other amounts that have been said. That is the lowest amount that I've seen the adapter with the camera. So anyone with Nikon and they want the mirrorless bit, you would just buy the camera and the adapter and just use all your F lenses, because all of the new lenses for the camera are quite dear. That 50mm one is being said to be 2.5 times dearer than Nikon's current 50mm lens that you can buy. You have to ask, is it really worth 2.5 times more for this lens? Until you get the camera and the lens and some shots start showing up, you can't answer that question. So what are we left with now? What are we left with that we need to know to decide to buy this camera? Well, really, if you're new to photography, if you just want a camera, there is loads of cameras with lenses, mirrorless ones, which start at around £450. I'd start with one of them, just so you can get used to carrying it around. There's no point spending over £2,000 on a camera when it hasn't dipped its foot into the water, when it has nothing to beef it up and improve it. The only thing that Nikon has is that they weatherproofed it. They weather sealed it to a good level. That is their benefit. But I don't think that is a good enough benefit. All the videos that I've seen have still said that for camera, the Sony A7 or 3 is a much better camera than Nikon's range. Nikon have not come in equal to attack Sony, they've come in behind them. They've come in behind them, and here's the reason why. Here's what you've waited for. Why Nikon put one slot on their camera. And I bet you it's as simple as this. They put one slot on the camera to cut costs. They looked more at, we want a camera at this price range, what can we put into it, but it has to come to this price range. And because they limited the price, the camera is limited in what it offers. Well, now, let's think. Why don't they just change the slot from 1 to 2? Because they can't. It was asked to a Nikon person, why didn't you put 2 card slots in? Why is there not 2 card slots in? The response was that the camera body isn't big enough to put the 2 card slot unit into it. Now how stupid is that? They know fine well, they've seen it fine well from Sony, who got slated once again for only having 1 card slot when they started 5 years ago. And Nikon haven't learned from that. They've technically done all the mistakes that Sony did 5 years ago when they did this camera. They designed the body. They could have made the body big enough to take 2 card slots. They decided not to. Ask the question, why? The only reason that you can come to is that it's because of cost. They couldn't put a dual card slot into their camera and still get it so it could compete to the price of Sony and make the profit margin they want to make. Now, is this camera going to kill Nikon? No, it isn't. It is their first step, and all their loyal followers, all the loyal owners who already have it, will still buy it and buy the adapter because of its name. And the thing comes is that the D850 is the biggest selling camera they have got. They can't make it fast enough. They have orders waiting to be fulfilled on it. They're making a lot of profit on it. So therefore, they can lose a bit of that profit, write it off for tax, and do the mirrorless and get in. Because if they're not in, and then just Sony just plays and runs around and does whatever they like. But at least Sony is actually listening to people and coming out with a decent enough camera that people like. Because the Sony mirrorless, they're running off the shelves as well. If you look at an A7, you can get an A7 with a lens for £800. Whereas Nikon, anywhere in this ballpark for a camera. Olympus cameras. You can get an Olympus camera for around £450 with as a lens. If you're starting, you should come in at this price. So, in a few years' time, Nikon will get their act together. They will put 2 slots in. They will have a better buffer, and maybe the right speed of a supposedly fast card will be fast when they work out what they cocked up. So, there you go. The simplest and easiest thing is why there's only 1 card slot is down simply to money and profit they want to make from the camera. Now don't think Sony are just going to sit by and let Nikon take even 1% of the share. They're going to start banging away again and showing why they are number 1 in most of America, North America, and all of this, and why the camera's good. Because the camera is good. You have to say that. If they weather sealed it, it would be better because people would appreciate it. But of all the things that I've seen in videos, nobody's camera has ever been killed by not having the weather sealing on a Sony. So once again, you're down to simple facts. Everything Nikon's doing is just for cash, and the only reason they're bringing out the mirrorless is so that people don't leave because they want a mirrorless camera. So they've given them one. It's not quite there, but they'll still buy it, because it's just like the people who go out and buy an iPhone 10 and pay £1,000 because it's the name, because they like it, and because it's something new, and they can flash it to their friends. I have something new. That's all it is. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.